There are moments in your life that don't feel important when they happen, but when you look back, you realize everything changed because of one conversation. And for me, that was a phone call. A call that forced me to confront uncertainty about money, about risk, and what it actually means to build something that lasts. That moment, inevitably, is what led to this show today and why I feel compelled to share the Sage journey that I'm on. I'm Brian Spear, and this is The Sage Investor. It's a podcast for people who've moved past chasing returns and started asking better questions about durability, downside, and long-term clarity. Today, I'm joined by someone who's been part of that journey from the early days, Kevin Bupp, who's not only the engine behind our deals, but he's also going to help unpack the story behind the call that changed everything and how it shaped the durably wonderful company that we have built over the past decade. This isn't a story about success. This is my version of the American dream and learning how to protect it.
Brian, my friend, before we get into your backstory, I want to take a couple steps back, and I want to rewind back to our beginning, where we started off, that first call that took place on a Friday afternoon that changed everything. And for those that are unaware, on my podcast, way back in the early days, I launched it back in 2014. I used to offer up, basically 4 30-minute segments every Friday for a number of years, where I would hop on and talk shop with anyone who was listening that wanted to talk real estate, talk business, whatever it was. And I really just wanted to get to know others. I wanted to get to know my listener base. And one of those early calls was Brian's, the first time that we ever connected. So, I'm just curious to know, Brian, what do you remember about that first conversation that we had? It was so long ago, but what do you remember about it?
Can you believe it? It's been 10 years, more than that, whatever the heck it's been so long. But yes, I couldn't agree more. A conversation that materially changed the trajectory of my life and yours as well, as we've kind of grown this thing over time. But I know that was the very first moment that you and I connected on the phone, but I felt like we'd actually connected a couple of months prior, right? So I actually heard this beautiful golden pipes through the radio right in the podcast of the one and only Kevin Bupp. And I mean, on real estate investing for cash flow, I'm like, early adopter of podcasting, autodidactic, going through all the nonfiction books I could possibly listen to, trying to improve self-development, all the myriad of different things, right? And I stumbled upon real estate investing for cash flow, aptly named, and just loved all the various things that you were trying to achieve in the podcast. I think it resonated with me for a litany of different reasons. And so, I knew that I wanted to reach out to you, and ultimately it took me a long time to ultimately bring out this little memento that I've held for over a decade and hand it to you. But I think in everybody's life, they've got a couple of really important mementos that they hold near and dear to them. One of which is this little tiny piece of paper. Because when I scheduled a call with Kevin, he was booked out so far in advance, like 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right? And it was booked out so far in advance that I had another 8 weeks to go back. And I listened to all the episodes, every single one of them. And I re-listened to every single one of the episodes. And over the course of that 6-8 weeks, I jotted down all the notes. I probably knew more about you than you knew about yourself in that period of time, right? Kevin's 7 years my senior. I knew his birthday, right? I knew your wife. I knew your kid. I knew you're from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I knew your whole trajectory, your whole background in real estate, how you got to where you're at, all the myriad of things. And I had written on this piece of paper all the things I wanted to achieve in that call. And as opposed to simply looking at it as a random call with a random stranger, I went into the call, and it took me an entire decade to pull out this piece of paper, this very important memo that I hold dear to my heart. And at the very top of it, it says, goal of the call, become a business partner with Kevin Bupp. I went into that call trying to sell you on the idea and the concept of ultimately becoming a business partner with me in due time. I knew that would be an impossible task in 30 minutes, right? But I wanted to provide enough intrigue for you and enough background about who I am, my background, what I was able to accomplish historically, all the things that I bring to the table, capital, hard work, intelligence, a myriad of different things, and try to get you intrigued enough on that 30 minutes to maybe continue the conversation down the road, because I knew that you had a lot to offer, and I had a lot to offer you as well. And I just felt like if we could get in the same room for a long enough period of time, I could convince you of the value I could bring to the table. And I know that we can have a massive impact on a lot of different folks over time. So that was my personal perspective, buddy, on kind of that first call. That's what I went into it, framing it and looking at, how I remember it. But what about you? What do you remember from that call?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I remember where I was. I was in my office, when I had that call. And I took those calls. I was on the road half the time, in the office. office, right, of different areas, and I would just, hop on Friday afternoon and talk shop. So, but I do remember exactly where I was, because, I've had good conversations with some folks, some maybe lackluster, but yours really, it stood out. Like, I'm like, man, this guy is very intentional with who he is, what he wants out of life. And, you seem to have quite a bit of structure and maybe not everything figured out, but, you had a plan. And in one way or another, you seemed as though you were going to achieve that plan, whether it was with me or someone else, or like, you were going to find your path there. And so I'd say that stuck out to me. And I don't recall how much time, went between or was between, that first call to the next follow up. I do remember, and maybe we talked another time or two prior, but I remember you coming through town. I remember actually meeting you at a Whole Foods to literally grab a beer, which is kind of odd for those that don't know. Whole Foods actually have bars in some of them, in some of their locations. So Brian and I literally met at a Whole Foods and talk shop, and I do remember that like the actual first time I believe that was the first time we met in person, and I remember your continued follow up. Like you were very persistent, and at that stage of our business, I'd gone through building up quite a big business, lost it all in '08, took a couple year hiatus, kind of dove back into it, and started buying again back in like 2011. And we were kind of just at a baseline of rebuilding, of trying to figure out, phase two of the journey, and mobile home parks were the pathway forward. But again, it was like the very initial stages. I don't know if I'd call it a business, right? We had some great assets. We're doing great things, buying great deals, making money. But it didn't necessarily have a super strong foundation into place. And I think you identified that as an opportunity on your side to where you could bring some of your experience, some better structure and a lot of insights that you took away from the company that you were even working for. You got in the startup world at an early stage. I mean, you're like the sixth person in line at the startup that ultimately went on to grow to a big scale company and sell for multiple millions of dollars. And so you felt as though you could bring some value to the equation. So again, I remember those early conversations. I remember meeting. I remember when we finally agreed that we were going to do something together. And what I recall from that moment is you kind of offer saying, "Hey, let me put my money where my mouth is. I got some money I wanted to invest. Do you guys have any deals? Let me kind of prove my worth." And we happened to have a mobile home park in Alabama at that time that was quite a bit of a turnaround. And I remember you not just diving in with money, but diving in and saying, "Hey, put me on a plane, send me there. Let me prove myself to you, and let me show you that. Just give me a little bit of guidance. Tell me a little bit of what to do, and I'll figure the rest out, and I'll prove that I could bring a lot of value to the organization." And you did it, man. So I know there was a time frame in between there, but I think the thing that just stuck out to me was like your persistence. I mean, like you definitely kept following up, and I just didn't know where to fill you in at that point. Like I didn't know what I didn't know about us rebuilding and actually trying to build a better company, right? Build it better the second time around. But anyway, I am very grateful that our paths crossed. You never know when you start putting those things out into the world. Like I'm thinking back of even the podcast. I remember Joanna, my wife. I used to go in the garage. I had an office. We had like this home office in the garage. And I would go out there on Sunday evening after the kids went to bed, after my son Jackson went to bed, after Joe went to bed at like 10 o'clock at night. And I would spend from like 10 o'clock at night to like 2 or 3 in the morning, literally recording my show for that Monday. And that went on for, a year or two. She's like, "What are you doing? Why are you spending all this time on this podcast?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know the answer to that yet. All I know that it's going to bring value to us, to the business, to, it's going to do great things. I can't exactly answer, what that means yet, but ultimately, Brian, like our partnership is one of those big things that came from it. I mean, like literally it's a beautiful thing." So anyway, I'll shut up.
Couldn't agree more, man. And I appreciate you giving me the chance, right? Giving me an opportunity to go swing the bat, as it were. It's sometimes you're sitting on the bench, you don't even get an opportunity. But I knew that if I would be granted an opportunity, that ultimately we'd make the most of it. But I want to maybe share a little bit of insight from my perspective of why is it even compelling? Why would I even reach out in the first place to a guy such as Kevin, right? So in those first maybe 20 episodes, whatever you rolled out, I can't even recall. In my mind, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's 7 years my senior, but he's got years of wisdom well beyond that which I've been able to achieve. I can accelerate the process tremendously. At that juncture, right, you'd started a business. I always like to say, look, Kevin's never really had a real job. He started buying real estate when he was in his teens. You know, he's never really had a real job. He's been doing it now 30 years, right? Originally was in the single family space, built up about 125 single family homes by the time you were in your mid 20s, doing all the amazing things, right? Got all the fancy toys, all the cool vehicles, all the fun stuff, you know, doing exceptionally well. But then the Great Recession hit, you basically lose it all or a huge piece of it. And then you realize that you can't just invest for appreciation, but rather you need to focus on real estate investing for cash flow. Then ultimately try a bunch of different types, office, you know, multifamily, retail, a litany of different types, but ultimately find mobile home parks. And at that time, you had proven the business model by buying maybe 1 or 2 mobile home parks, but I knew that you were all in on it. And I knew that the 15 years of experience that you'd had at that point, I could benefit from the 15 years of wisdom that you'd learned. And you, I know, can benefit from the decade of experience that I have of scaling a company along the way. And I just knew that if we were able to put those two together, we'd be in a really good position. So again, you're 7 years my senior. I was like, man, Kevin's got it all. He's got a wonderful wife, beautiful family, great kiddo, living the life. He's now got cash flow to do what he wants on his own terms, living the life that you want, really, truly have real freedom, freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, freedom of purpose, the things that you otherwise want in life. And I was like, hey, if I could be half as successful as what Kevin is at that time, then I'd feel pretty good about myself, right? And that was what prompted me to reach out. And so in any event, appreciate you giving me the shot, man. And while you know, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, there was a heck of a lot that ultimately went into building this thing over the past decade. I'm very, very proud of what we've been able to accomplish and the impact that we've made. And we're still just scratching the surface, right?
Yeah. No. So this is a question I've never asked you, but I'd be curious to know now that we're talking shop here and just talk about the beginnings. I mean, we're talking 10 plus years ago. It's a long time. I forgot what I even had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what ultimately played out 10 years ago. And so I guess from your side, just a partnership, a business partnership is every bit of a marriage as a marriage is, right? I mean, and some would even say it might even be deeper grained, right? I mean, like you're going into business and building something that is very difficult to ever unravel, right? And so like you better have the right intentions going in and be in complete alignment, have a level of trust that is at its highest degree, right? And so I guess from your side, what made you trust me before, I guess you could say, there was any reason to trust me, right? Like we didn't really know each other all that well. Like you've been listening to the show. We met a couple times and we did work a little bit together before we really dove all in, but not really. I mean, I think once we truly started working together, it was kind of like, hey, we're doing this thing. I guess this is it. Like we're rolling forward, full steam ahead. Right. But, would love to hear. I've never asked you the question, but would love to know what really gave you that level of trust, because it's a big decision on your part, right? Like you were kind of like ready for the next step and you're ready to go all in. And you chose me to do it with.
2 things come to mind for me. One is regarding the philosophy of burning the boats. Tony Robbins tells this beautiful story associated with burning the boats. And it basically is this individual that's a captain of a ship going into battle with his fleet, and they ultimately arrive in the new land and they sit down. And the first directive that he gives to all of his associates in the Navy is to go turn around and burn all the boats, because they're about to go into war. And the idea and the concept is we will either find a way or we will perish. We will either win or we will perish. And so if you burn the boats, you're going to have so much more fire to be able to persist through the inevitable downturns and the issues and the difficulties that arise. So when I go all in, I definitely want to have that mindset at my back that I know that I will do whatever it takes to be successful. And so that's one piece of it, wanting to ensure that we put all the chips on the table. I would say also secondarily, I've come to learn about my gut in time. Here's what I've come to realize about my gut. The gut is not always right, but here's what I know about the gut. Anytime that I've had a scenario where my gut has been pointing in the wrong direction or something is a little bit off and I don't necessarily trust this person, I can't put my finger on it, something seems awry with this individual, I don't know what it is. In 100% of circumstances where my gut has been telling me that, in every single scenario, my gut has proven me to be correct. However, the inverse, where your gut is giving you all of the reasons to push forward and accelerate and lean into the relationship, now, that doesn't give you 100% pass. It does not give you a 100% pass, but it does give you the green light to continue to persist and persist and persist until you're proven wrong. And so just listening, right? Having the ability to understand a little bit more about who you are and your character just by virtue of the podcast. You listen to somebody long enough, you get to know them a little bit. It's not perfect. It most assuredly isn't perfect, but it's a very good barometer to understand how you tick. And I knew a little bit more about you than you knew about me at that time, which gave me more comfortability with you than probably you had about me. But it was enough to get me comfortable pushing my chips in, knowing that I would find a way to figure it out. Fail forward. And that's kind of been my philosophy in life over and over and over again. We might not win in every single scenario, but it's win or learn. We never lose. We'll continue to get better. We'll continue to fail forward, and we'll eventually figure it out. We're sharp enough. We're smart enough. We're young enough. We're hungry enough. We will eventually figure it out. We'll have the scar tissue to prove it at the end of the day, but we'll eventually figure it out and make it to the other side. That was kind of how I felt about it and what got me comfortable kind of in working with you, right? I'd seen, you'd already had the scar tissue. You'd already learned the philosophy. You'd already understood it shouldn't be about investing for, appreciation. You knew the wisdom behind real estate investing for cash flow, had the scar tissue to prove it, decided you were going to persist with it anyway, even with all the struggles. And that's the sort of stuff that got me comfortable knowing that you had the persistence similar to that which I did, just in a mirroring effect, if you follow my logic there.
Yeah. No, I love it. And for those, to provide some more context, of what burning the boats meant to Brian, caught me off guard. I remember you called me one day. You're like, hey, by the way, I just signed a lease. I quit my job. I quit my 6-figure high paying job. I just signed a lease down about 20 minutes away from your office. And we're going to figure out a way to do this together, man. And I don't think we hadn't said really yes yet. But you're like, hey, man, I'm here. We're going to do this thing. Hell or high water. Let's make some magic happen. And so I to be honest with you, buddy, I looked at you and I was like, I'm excited. This guy, man, he's got something going on, and he's got some energy about him that you don't see all that often. I was like, but I might also have a stalker, honey. I was like, I don't know. I was like, he moved down here. We didn't talk about it too much. He moved down here. He's here, and he wants to come to the office Monday morning. And so anyway, it's funny. Looking back now, it's a beautiful thing, man. And what we built is absolutely incredible. So appreciate all that you brought to the equation, brother. And it's been a fun partnership. And we're roughly a decade into this thing, and it literally just feels like yesterday that we got rolling, right? Again, I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. I say, thinking back 10 years, it's been a long time, but it feels like a long time, but it doesn't really feel like that long of a time, right? And we both have grown families, and you weren't even married back then, right? You got engaged, you have two beautiful children now, and you really built a family over the past couple of years, and times have changed, but one thing has remained consistent, and that's our commitment to one another and our commitment to the organization. So it's an amazing thing.
I can't wait to see what the next decade holds for us, right? It's beautiful to pause, reflect, look back, and see what we've been able to achieve, but I can't wait to see kind of what happens as we progress into the next decade as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back even further now, because I want to go back to where the seeds were actually planted. Back in your childhood, right? Back to the formative years, where the grind actually started. I know that, you moved in with your mom early on, and kind of a single parent household, split in time between your mom and your dad. And that's tough for any child to weather. I know there was some volatility in your early childhood years. And so just curious to know, how did that shape your sense of just independence and drive?
Great question. There's this phrase that's basically, if you want to understand the man, study the juvenile delinquent. Understand what occurred to him in his childhood years, his formative childhood years, and you'll understand a little bit more about what makes him tick. So I'll run it back. To my childhood. And while now today it's amazing to look and say, hey, we've done mobile home park deals in about 20 different states, hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions, 16 full cycle mobile home park deals, own stuff all over the country, right? My first experience with mobile home parks was when I lived in one when I was 10 years old. My parents got divorced, and my dad moved to Gary, Indiana during the 1990s when it was known as the murder capital of the world. And my mom moved to a mobile home park on the south side of Chicago. And that was the moment in time where I decided that, I was going to do whatever it takes. I don't care how hard I have to work. I don't care what profession I have to go into to ultimately navigate this, to ultimately ensure that when I get kind of the same age as what my folks were, that I would put my family in a better financial situation. I just was determined to do that. So what do you do when you're 10 years old and you want to get out of that situation? you start asking these very fundamental questions. Okay. How do I get out of this situation? Well, I need money. How do I get money? I can't get a job, right? How do I get a good job? I better get a good degree. How do I get a good degree? Well, I don't have any money to pay for a college education. I better find a way to get some scholarships. So I worked really hard academically and athletically to get scholarship offers to a litany of different places throughout the country. And so I graduated. By the time my high school career was over, I graduated 5th in my high school class. And a lot of the different individuals above me went to really high quality schools, Ivy League style, et cetera. I chose to get a scholarship and go to the University of Kentucky, right? So I also not only wanted to get academic money, but also athletic money if I could find a way to do it. I wasn't tall enough to play basketball, wasn't strong enough to play football, but in baseball, you could be any size and shape. So I taught myself how to hit both right-handed and left-handed so I can get more notoriety from college scouts. And by the time that I was a senior, got scholarship offers to a lot of places. And again, landed at the University of Kentucky, where I played baseball in the SEC, had an amazing run. By the time that I was a senior, I was captain of the team on a team that had 6 different big leaguers on it, right? So the pinnacle of amateur baseball, loved every minute of it. And it was an amazing ride. Those are the glory days from my perspective. Way back when I had hair, man. Woo, you should have seen it. It was unbelievable. But I would say in that period of time when I was at the University of Kentucky is another one of those fundamental moments in life that changes your trajectory. So I was a business major, and I remember being in an accounting class in Memorial Hall. Beautiful, beautiful building on the University of Kentucky campus. And I walked into this accounting course, and the professor is preaching to about 200 different students about compound interest. It was the first time that I'd ever heard the concept of compound interest, and somebody explained that to me. And everybody's, half asleep at 8 a.m, still wearing pajama pants and the like, right? And here I am, what seems to me to be the only one paying attention. It's one of those light bulb moments. You just hear it and it resonates with you, and the light bulb goes off. And at the time, I literally have a negative net worth. I'm worth $0, okay? But I know in that moment that if I simply put a little bit of money away every single year over a long enough period of time, inevitably, I know with assurance I'm definitely going to become a millionaire. And it was the first time that I knew that I was going to be financially successful. I knew that I'd be successful in a myriad of different ways or whatever, in various things that I did. I feel like I've got a healthy amount of talents, was blessed with a lot of things in life. A strong hairline wasn't one of them. But, I knew I'd be successful in some things. But I knew in that moment that I would definitely become a millionaire because I'm willing to delay gratification and sacrifice and be a little squirrel and put a little bit of capital away in order to become successful financially over the long term. From that point, it was, again, hair on fire, trying to learn as much as I possibly could about investments. I thought I was going to go into investment banking, but eventually, as you go down the rabbit hole of self-education, it was more simple to understand real estate and take control and grab the wheel and go down the alternative investment path and choose real estate. So from that moment, I knew that I was going to get involved in investments. I knew that I was going to go get involved in building a real estate company, but I still had no capital to really start a business. So when I graduated, I was very, very fortunate to get calls from several different professional teams. I was asked to go take a free agent deal with either the Blue Jays or the Indians. That was one option, one path to go play free agent ball. Or alternatively, I had 6 different job opportunities, right? I was one step beneath academic All-American when I was at the University of Kentucky. I was ESPN The Magazine co-side at ESPN All District. Of all those job opportunities, I chose to take the one that was going to end up making me the most money. Not because I'm the greediest guy in the world, but because I knew that I needed a bankroll, fuel to ultimately go start a real estate company. So for the next several years, I traveled throughout the country as a telecommunications SOX auditor, doing really well, making 6 figures right out of the gate, putting away as much money as I possibly could, building piles of cash, all the while knowing I wanted to turn it into streams of income. And then as I'm going through my university on wheels, traveling around, learning about investments and so on and so forth, I hear this one random guy named Kevin Bupp on the podcast giving me the juice associated with real estate investing for cash flow. And I said, you know what, I'm going to schedule a call on Friday. And that's really what ultimately allowed me to take the leap of faith and start entrepreneurship, buddy.
Yeah, no, that's we're going to back it up a little bit. We're going to pack some of this. Okay. So I want to go back to to your college class where everyone else was sleeping. And ultimately, that's the day that compound interest became a thing to you. Do you remember the example that your professor shared? Was it the whole like a penny a day, double it every day for 30 days versus that of $1 million today? Which would you rather have? Was that the example? Or just, I guess what I'm trying to understand is like what really made it clicked where you're like, holy shit, this is so simple, but so profound. Really, it seemed like the spark happened during that class where your professor really started speaking about compound interest. So anyway, just would love to understand a little bit more about that period. And then, we'll fast forward a little bit.
Yeah, to me, from that moment on, I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life was to be involved in investments, period. That's what I knew what I wanted to do from that moment on. I didn't know exactly what it meant in terms of investment banking or real estate, but I knew that I wanted to be involved in the investment world. I believe the example was the penny doubled every single day, and then that exemplifies it. And then they extrapolate it to over the course of 40 years, if you put away whatever, $100 a month or $200 a month at a reasonable percentage interest rate, right? Over 40 years, this is what happens. They show you the math, and it's ironclad, right? It is irrefutable evidence of ultimately how you can very simply become a millionaire. And to me, that was the pinnacle, right? If that's the as Brian Tracy would convey, like back in the day, it was like, what do you want your kid to do? Either grow up to be president or become a millionaire by the time they turn 30, right? Like do those two things and your kids are successful. And that was what I wanted to do, right? Just put my family in a great financial position. And from that point forward, I knew that I could do it. And I was just dedicated, driven to do whatever it takes to ultimately make that come to fruition. So yeah, that's the best I can remember it, buddy.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know that we talk about delayed gratification quite a bit in our business. I mean, in real estate, it's a long game, right? Like you hit some triples or some home runs or even some grand slams every once in a while, but really it's a long game, right? It's singles and doubles. And delayed gratification really comes to play as you build a real estate organization that will stand the test of time. And so would love to understand from your perspective, how did delayed gratification really show up for you in those earlier years? I mean, I know that, we could talk about the Corolla. I think that's a fun story. I learned a lot of things about you when we first met, that really resonated with, I think we had, somewhat similar upbringings, not necessarily the same path, but just, very humble upbringings, blue collar, parents, just everyone's working hard, everyone's grinding away, looking at a bigger picture, but knowing that it's going to take some time to get there. So when did you first realize, delayed gratification was had importance to you? And then how did that show up in your daily life?
We'll give you the example of, you call it the Toyota Corolla. I call her the Silver Stallion.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Love that vehicle. 4 cylinders of raw power. But ultimately traveling all over the country, right? So, I was one of these guys that didn't have a vehicle, didn't get a car when I was 16 years old, didn't get a new car, didn't get a used car, didn't get anything. And got my license, but wasn't really worth much. Ultimately went to college, still didn't have a vehicle until I think I was maybe a junior in college. And my dad, worked his fingers to the bone and ultimately purchased, it was at the time a brand new Toyota Corolla, and woo, was it the best thing that I've ever seen in my life. Freedom on wheels, right? So I have this vehicle. What you're pointing out is that I kept that vehicle for as long as my now wife, my beautiful bride, would allow me to continue driving it.
You didn't want to get rid of it. I remember the day you traded in. You told me you traded in. I'm like, you did what? I feel like you should have
I mean, it should have been in a museum, honestly.
Yeah, wrapped it up in cellophane and put it in the backyard as like a decorative ornament or something.
Correct. I mean, I thought about getting the classic plates, you know what I mean? The whole thing. But that vehicle was everything to me, and it was an example of delayed gratification, to your point, right? So in my 20s, I was a university on wheels, right? I'm traveling throughout the country, hit all 50 states by the time I turned 30. So I'm driving all over God's green earth, just a university on wheels, learning as much as I could possibly learn about investments as I'm working, right? But I'm simultaneously learning as much as I possibly can. In every way, shape, or form that I possibly can, I'm beginning the process of building fuel, a nest egg, my bankroll to go start a business. So I'm living like a pauper. You got to remember, I grew up with very nominal means, right? Like when we moved to Gary, Indiana, the furniture that we had when we moved into the house in Gary, Indiana, there was literally nothing there. My dad went to the Walmart, bought 2 little beanbag chairs, threw them in the living room. We're like, that was the furniture that we had, right? Plopped an old tube TV on a nightstand, and that was the living room. Well, welcome to the house, right? And so I was accustomed to having minimal, humble beginnings, right? So I didn't need a ton. I still was living like a college kid. And I traveled all over for the next 7-8 years with a very, very minimal expense load. And I was trying to obviously make as much as I could, but you couldn't control the top side of how much you earned in that respective role. But what I could control was the expenses. So I minimized it to the best of my ability and continued to save as much as I could for an entire decade, right? That vehicle, ended up having hundreds of thousands of miles. I had, enough enough cash in the bank account to be able to go buy whatever vehicle I could have possibly wanted, right? To go impress the girls and this, that, and the other. But it was more important to me to ultimately delay gratification with some of those material things so that I could build a nest egg that would allow me to launch a business. And that's kind of the example of delayed gratification, right? If you're going to use the marshmallow test over at Stanford, I was the kid that was definitely going to get 2, and I would have followed up and said, hey man, if I outlast every other kid, can I get like 5 marshmallows? I'm that kid. I'm that kid. Patient as the day is long, right?
I'm excited to kind of bring the listeners up to speed with where we're currently at with Sunrise, and really we've got some amazing goals that we've got jotted down, and really excited about the next couple of years, and just some big things that are happening, right? But again, kind of anchoring back to the early days. So you and I, we committed like, hey, we're going to do this thing together. We're going to build something together. We'll be curious again. We're talking 10 years now that we've been at this thing. Any vivid memories that you might have from those earlier days? Like, we had a lot of different fire drill moments. One that comes to mind is Cedarhurst and Walston. We bought those properties. We still own those today, and one of our old legacy funds. But lots of just haphazard stuff, just fire drill moments, kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and anything that comes to mind.
When we first started bringing in homes to one of our first JV deals that we did with our own personal capital in Alabama, and we started bringing in new homes, we got to do the dealer's license thing, and we started bringing in new homes from Clayton. I'll never forget, at the time, our on-site manager was a very interesting character, and this was a more modest-sized community, but I remember a phone call that we got from Frank, amazing individual, but the tone in his voice conveying that when the home was being dropped off, that the double wide was stuck in the mud and we couldn't get it turned around and actually put prudently on the site that it was supposed to be. These are sorts of little tiny things that you come to appreciate years later as you work with bigger vendors, more professional operations, so on and so forth. And we were just throwing stuff together with bubble gum and duct tape, trying to make things happen, right? That was kind of how it was at the very beginning. We were doing an exceptional job, but I think it was more done with grit and determination than anything else. And, I would say just buying cigar butt businesses, right, where you're just doing such a good job, I'd say you on the front end, right, on the acquisition side, buying deals with such a margin of safety, you can't go wrong. But operationally, I don't think we were as near as tight as we need to be, right, to be successful in the business today. That's kind of how I feel. What about you, man? What about any stories that you remember from those early days?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, as they say, you build the plane as you fly it, right? And I don't know if there's a different way when you're kind of bootstrapping things. Like, I think that's the only way, right? And so, like, you just take one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, and you figure the issues out and the challenges out as they get thrown at you, and you get so many that are thrown at you that you just start prioritizing. Like, what are the biggest ones that are going to potentially sink the ship? Let's focus on those first, and all the other ones will probably just fall off. And if they're important enough, they'll circle back around, right? And we'll address them at that point. So, I one of the ones I remember vividly was, and I'd mentioned it, was Walston and Cedarhurst. It was probably the first big acquisition that we ever did. Big's all relative now because we've done some, pretty significant size deals over the last couple of years. But back then, that was huge. It was two mobile home parks closing at the same time, 180 lots in total. It was, if I recall, I think it was $2.6 million or $2.65 million, like total acquisition price. And that was that literally up until that point, that was the biggest single deal that we had ever done. At that time, we had a community manager that we thought was lined up to step in to oversee these communities. They were in Maryland, so they were quite a ways away, 1,000 miles away from us here in Florida. And what I remember is about 2 or 3 days leading up to the closing, we couldn't get a hold of the community manager that we had hired. 2 days before the closing, a day before the closing. Oh shit, we don't have any management on site, and we're about to buy these properties. And I just remember you and I flying up there. I mean, we both flew up there. I flew back alone, and you stayed behind. You took one for the team, and we posted you up in a whatever hotel brand it was. It wasn't a Motel 8, but it also wasn't a fancy one. It was somewhere in between, and that's where you called home for like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't remember how long it was. Maybe it was even a month. And I just remember you out there, literally physically walking around these communities, handing out, welcome letters to all the residents and dealing with all the shrapnel that was coming your way, as we went through that transitionary period. And again, just moments like that really helped just shape who we are, what the company was, who we are as individuals, and just know that I knew at that point moving forward, like you were always willing to take one for the team, right? Like I just had Jackson, it was only, I think, maybe a year or two old. I don't even know if maybe Joan was pregnant with Julian at that time. I can't remember, but like I kind of had some additional obligations that you didn't have yet at that point. And so you kind of raised your hands like, look, man, I got this. We'll figure this out. I'll go there. And so that's a big vivid one in my mind. And again, I think just goes back to really cementing who we both are as individuals and why we work so well as partners in the business.
I think just business in general is about long-term relationships and trying to ensure that you are striving forward for the best interest of both parties at all times. And there will be periods of time where one party has the upper hand and then the other party has the upper hand. And this ebbs and flows throughout the course of a 20, 30, 40-year relationship. But you always have to ensure that you have each other's backs and are willing to do whatever is necessary on behalf of the other party, right? I knew, and again, everybody's memory is a little bit fuzzy. So similar to what you're referencing, I couldn't agree more. I remember we were trying to solve the riddle the day before we were closing the property, and it was like, Friday night at 7 p.m. or whatever it was, or it must have been during the week. But it was like 7 p.m. during the week, and I was like, man, well, you got a wife, you got kids, you got obligations. It looks like I'm taking a red eye up there this evening. I remember flying a red eye overnight just to be there on the morning so that there was somebody on site. And I actually lived in a single wide. I didn't get to stay in the old Super 8 down the road.
Oh, that's right. We kept it.
I was staying in a single wide for a few months.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that was what it was. So again, over the course of, a decade, you start to understand, right? If you wear every single hat in the business, you come to appreciate every single role that is necessary to grow an organization. We've learned a ton along the way, but I would never ask anybody in our organization to do something that I'm not willing to do myself, right? It's one of those things where you roll up your sleeves when it's necessary. And, it's not like we're living up here in an ivory tower and aren't willing to go do what's necessary to make this happen for everybody involved, all the different stakeholders, right? From the residents inside of the communities to the teammates that we have here at Sunrise to all the different, partners that we have throughout the country. So again, you have to do what you have to do, right? Whatever it takes, again, to make it happen, right? So I'll leave it at that, buddy. That's how I feel.
Yeah, no, that's great. Would love to maybe pivot a little bit here and talk about being a husband, being a father. You point out quite often I'm 7 years older than you. I'm old. You keep saying 30 years of me being in the real estate business. It's more like 25, right? And so stop trying to age me. That's why I'm wearing my hat so that I'm covering up all the grays that I have now. I've got the whole racing stripe of grays down my scalp.
Distinguished, man. Distinguished.
Yeah. I think we all define success maybe differently and wealth differently at like a young age, right? Like I remember even back when I got my first paper out and I'd shovel snow, mow grass. Like to me, success was having enough money to go buy the latest and greatest like BMX bike or whatever cool toy was out in the marketplace, right? That my parents couldn't afford to buy, and so I had to go figure out a way to buy. Right? It was material based, and even in my early 20s, it was still very much material based items, whether it be a house or a car or just, having money, like having cash to go do what I wanted. But a lot of it was really revolved around material items. It wasn't necessarily like experiences as I think about them today are creating, fond memories with the family, with the wife, with our kids and all that. And so, I obviously, when we first met, I, was already a father, a very young father. I just had, my first, Jackson, he's 12 today. And then I had my second, son, Julian, and, you were still, you got married, a couple years back. You've got two beautiful girls now, but I was a little further ahead than you, right? Of the whole, father and husband thing. And so from my perspective, I saw some beautiful changes happen in you as an individual to where, you've always been a grinder. You still are today. You'll work literally, you'll beat anyone. If the competition is like who can work harder, like you'll always win. You'll come out ahead, right? Like that's who you are. That's, like that's in your DNA. But I've watched you evolve, into a husband, into a father, and find, and maybe you don't notice, but I notice it, like a real balance in your life and some intentionality behind showing up for your wife, showing up for your girls, and really always putting them putting all of them first, right? Like family is always first. And like we really, resonate that message through our organization as well. Like you'll never miss a family moment, right? Because of a work obligation, right? Like family always first. And so I'd love to know from your standpoint, just, how marriage and fatherhood, maybe shifted your definition of success, if it did or if it didn't, right? But what does that look like for you today?
Love this. And I would say first and foremost, kudos to you. I think that you lead the charge in the organization in ensuring that one of the core values is emanating throughout the entirety of the organization. One of the core values we have here at Sunrise is enjoy the ride. And that derives, I think, you embody that better than anybody that I've ever been around on a day-to-day basis. It's absolutely beautiful, and everyone should aspire to have that as a key principle in what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? We've come to learn that, after having 1,000 calls with investors and learning a ton over time, guys that have been unbelievably successful, right? Multiple 8 figures, 9 figures, multimillionaire, all this sort of stuff. What you come to realize after having thousands of conversations is that nobody that I've ever spoken to has said, I wish I would have made a little bit more money, right? When they're towards the end of their life. I wish I would have made a little more money. I wish I would have had another zero on the income statement, another zero on the balance sheet. It's always, I wish I would have been able to spend more time with my family. I wish I would have been able to pass along something else besides just a little bit of money along the way, right? And so for me, what this is all about, it's about freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, freedom of purpose, and not only passing along wealth, but also passing along wisdom to the next generation. Mm-hmm. We will have, learned so much over the course of our decades, and we want to be able to pass along not only this unbelievable amount of wealth that we will have been able to accrue over that period of time. We already have everything that we could possibly want to do what we want in all the endeavors in life, right? Now it's about doing more so that we can have a bigger impact. But so it's not just about passing along the wealth, it's about passing along the wisdom along the way to the next generation. And I will convey to you, right, that I will forever be indebted to my beautiful bride. She is a wonderful woman, and I have no idea how she puts up with my crap. That's exactly how I feel. Like, she's unbelievable. So when we first started dating, we still were in the Chicagoland area. That's where we're originally from. She is, at the time, she's a dance teacher. And at the time, she had a position up in the western suburbs of Chicago. And she could have stayed in that role. Once you are, a teacher and you're kind of solidified inside of that respective district, you could stay there for literally decades and, have your entire career trajectory laid out in front of you. And when I told her, I remember sitting down on the couch and I told her, I just unilaterally made the decision. At the time, we were still courting. We weren't yet engaged. We were dating. And I said, I'm moving to Florida, because I had it in my bones, deep in my bones, that I knew that I had to go down and try my hand at this venture. And for the rest of my life, I would regret it if I didn't take that leap of faith. And so that was very difficult for her. But she, prior to us even being engaged, was willing to walk away from everything, walk away from all of her friends, walk away from all of her family, walk away from her career, and come down and follow me into a venture that we hadn't even begun to build yet. Again, talk about putting all your chips on the table. Again, I will forever be indebted to her.
She's an angel.
She's either an angel or she's crazy. That's what people have been telling me, right? But so she took the leap of faith and came down with me. And again, I will forever be indebted to her for that. So I put in a lot of long, hard hours to get this business to the point where we've got a really solid foundation. We've now built it, and we've impacted so many different folks, right? Over 1,000 different investors, and we've done some amazing things. And now, for me, why do you do all that? The old adage goes, you should be willing to do what others are not willing to do for a period of 5 years, so that for the rest of your life, you can do what nobody else can do. And so I feel like we've crossed that chasm, where we're willing to do things that no one else is willing to do for a period of time, so that for the rest of our lives, we can do things that nobody else can do. And I think that flip occurs for me when I get married, when I have children. Now we have the luxury and the freedom, because we've been able to be successful in building the business to a size and scale that allows us to make the biggest impact possible, so that I could spend more time with our wonderful kiddos and kind of mimic what I would say the success that you've created along the way with you and your family. So kudos, and thank you for kind of leading the charge and charting out a path to follow in this regard. It's been phenomenal. And it's, again, something I'll forever be appreciative for, buddy.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. And yeah, to your point, Les, she's an angel. Joanna, angel as well, for dealing with my my craziness and all the crap I put her through, right? And it really, and it goes to having a supportive partner, right? Both at home and in a business, right? Like literally, we go back to talking about a marriage, right? Like business is a marriage, and like you got to have a supportive partner that like can see your vision, can help you see it through, and you're better, as a pair than you are as individuals. And so I think you've got that at home. I've got that at home, and we've got it inside the organization. So, which kind of, I guess bringing up to the present day, we've got a lot of cool things happening, man, inside of Sunrise, and just great team members. I feel like we've really done an incredible job. You've done an incredible job of really help finding the right individuals that have the right alignment of character, that have, that believe in our core values, like really hiring by our core values inside the organization, that have really turned something that was pretty cool, looking at it 5 years ago, pretty cool thing that we're doing, to a living, thriving organism that's full of just beautiful people, right? Beautiful souls that are helping, push the momentum forward. And so what fires you up? I'd love to answer the question as well, but I'd love from you. I'd love to know what fires you up about this next chapter that we have here at Sunrise.
We're trying to help as many people as possible live their version of the American dream and have the biggest impact that we possibly can. America's in an affordable housing crisis, right? We know this. Everybody knows this. It's common knowledge. And I know that I can't personally solve it. You can't personally solve it. We can't solve it ourselves, but we can flick, ding, make a dent in the affordable housing crisis. Every single time that we buy one of those communities, it's an opportunity for us to sell and provide a home to a resident that might be a single mom that's down on her luck, with an opportunity to live her version of the American dream. And every time that we do that, I just genuinely think of my situation when I was 10 years old and my uncle gifted my mom the down payment to go buy a mobile home in a community on the south side of Chicago. So I know that this is one of those business models that's the definition of a successful business model, right? Where you have the luxury of doing well financially while doing good socially as well. And so when people ask, hey, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? Retire from what? I mean, what could I possibly do that's better than this? We have a situation where we can provide the American dream to thousands of families throughout the country, the American dream of home ownership. Every time we grow the organization, we can hire phenomenal people, exceptionally well-deserving people that have great core values that benefit them and their families. And every single time we need to buy a mobile home park, we have to go bring in capital. And to do that, we can bring on partners and help them achieve their dreams along the way. They have different dreams than our residents, undoubtedly, right? But they still have hopes and wishes and dreams for their families, things that they want to pass along, wealth, wisdom, etc. And we can help everyone in the entire stakeholder chain. So for me, it's about impact. How much can we do? How big of a dent can we make along the way, right? We got a long runway. I know I look like I'm 50, 60, 70 years old. I'm still a relatively young guy, right? At least you have all your hair, buddy. But I mean, we still got some room to run here. That's kind of how I feel. I just want to make a big dent. But what about yourself? How do you feel about it?
No, and one more question. I want to ask one more additional follow-up question there before I give my feedback and answer that question. But I guess for those that are like any potential partners, investors that might be like listening to this show, there's multiple impacts on many different levels that we can make throughout the organization. From the residents all the way to our partners that really have helped us grow and build a thriving organization. So paint your picture. The impact that happens on our partner level. Do you want to continue attracting the Sunrise to who's the ideal fit from a partner perspective for our team?
I think for me, after having 1,000 conversations and then bringing on an investor success team that's now had thousands of more conversations, we've actually brought on about 1,000 investors. When I look at the individuals that ultimately resonate with us, it runs the gambit, right? I would consider folks very high net worth folks that have been quote unquote successful in the eyes of society, but are still looking for a little bit more. They still have this lingering feeling of being unfulfilled, right? They still have fragile income streams. Taxes are eroding their wealth left and right. And they're finding a situation where they know that they have no margin for error, where one wrong deal, one bad deal, one loss of material investment could wreck decades of hard work that they've put in to build this gigantic nest egg along the way, right? So the people that have resonated with us the most are founders of businesses, executives, entrepreneurs, professionals, folks that distrust Wall Street. They value transparency. They love, tax advantaged cash flow. They want to build legacy wealth. They want to pass along something more than just wealth, but they also want to pass along wisdom to the next generation, right? The type of individual that's making a conscious decision, between choosing the path of the Vanderbilts and choosing the path of the Rockefellers. Where in the Vanderbilts, again, both in their individual ways, were the most wealthy individual in the country. But within 3 generations, right, the Vanderbilts had squandered, unfortunately, all that respective capital. But the Rockefellers, literally generations and generations later, now hundreds of individuals still live off the original principal amount that was built by John D. Rockefeller, the original patriarch, based on his ability to appropriately structure their family's obligations, their family, their entity, their structure, their holding company, and manage capital in an exceptional manner so that they're not just passing along wealth. That's not enough. But you're passing along wisdom so that you have a legacy that will last for generations to come. Those are the individuals that really resonate with us, based on how we ultimately manage capital, why we do what we do, right? These are individuals that believe in kind of Warren Buffett's philosophy, and that's what we do. We manage capital the way that Warren Buffett does, and we apply his principles to essential use real estate. So anyway, I'll stop there. I could go on and on and on. You know better than anybody how long-winded I am, but that's my perspective, buddy. How do you feel?
It circles us back around to the theme of this podcast, right? The reason why you put together this podcast. I mean, you've been sitting on this knowledge and information, my friend, for so many years now. Internally, for those that don't know, myself and others in the organization have been pushing Brian to get this show out, to get this podcast released, because we know the amount of knowledge and wisdom that he has. It will have a profound impact on those that tune in and listen. So anyway, I appreciate you answering the question, and I wanted to bring it full circle, and just really let folks know that you're only a couple episodes in here, and what Brian has in store is significant, and I think you're going to get a lot of value from tuning into the show. I'm so excited, my friend, that you're finally doing it. It's been a long time coming, but all good things are worth the wait. So it's going to be an amazing thing, amazing ride. Well, Brian, this has been fun, my friend. Fun conversation. This is the first time that you and I have, maybe not the first time, but it's been quite some time, since we've got on actually just talk shop and really going back and reflected down memory lane, now a decade plus. And so it's been a fun conversation, hopefully very insightful for those that are tuning in and listening, get to learn a little bit more behind the scenes of our story, not just the story of Sunrise, but the story of our humble beginnings as well, and kind of where we came from, what we're all about. But, we've learned a lot along the way, done a lot of cool things, made a lot of mistakes. We're going to keep on growing day in, day out. But as we wrap this up, Brian, I'd ask you if you can go back, and have a candid conversation with 22, I'm going to say 22-year-old Brian, because I think that was the moment where you learned about compound interest, right? I think some light bulbs went off in your head at that point in your life. So if knowing what you know today, if you can go back and have a candid conversation, at the age of 22, what would you tell that younger Brian about the road ahead, what to expect and how to navigate it?
Oh man, this is so much fun, right? To reflect back on those humble beginnings. But where my mind goes is that when I was 22, I was at the University of Kentucky. And when I was there, our coach handed us a wristband. And you guys might remember, the wristbands that would have like WWJD, right? What would Jesus do? Or various different things. The one that he handed us was FIO. FIO. And what it stood for was figure it out. Figure it out. And what he meant was, you're now in college. I'm not your high school coach that's going to pander to you. I'm not going to make sure that you go to class. I'm not going to make sure that you do what you need to do. You're an adult. You're a grown-up. You're a man. You need to figure it out. And what I would convey is that he was right. If you have that mindset that you need to figure it out and you need to push forward, I'll tie it into what I'd consider to be a book that I read every single year. It's maybe my favorite book of all time. It's Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And the main tenet of that book is sage wisdom, is that in order to be successful, you must have a burning desire to achieve a specific outcome, and it must be backed by ridiculous amounts of perseverance and persistence. And if you have those two elements, that you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. You don't have all the answers, and that's okay. But you have to begin. You have to start. You have to have a burning desire to achieve XYZ goal, whatever it is in front of you, backed by ridiculous amounts of persistence. And if you have those elements, you will eventually figure it out. And so I'd go tell that guy, just do that. Just do it. Trust the process. and you'll figure it out. That's exactly how I feel.
Man, this is a lot of fun. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to turn the tables on you, and just really go back memory lane. You know, take a travel down memory lane and talk about all the cool things we've done. Man, it's a beautiful story, one that we're going to continue writing. Right, like we're writing it today. We're going to continue writing it 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and really excited about what the future has in store for us. So with that, my friend, I think we should probably get out of here. What do you think?
Yeah, that's right, man. Let's get the heck out of here. Just there will be many, many more, I'm sure, to come. But this was a phenomenal start, buddy. Looking forward to many more to come. Everything we talk about on the show, discipline, structure, patience, downside protection, all came from lived experiences, not a textbook. If this episode resonated, the next ones are going to go deeper into how those lessons show up in real life and real decisions. I appreciate you being here at the beginning. The rest of the journey builds from this foundation. So until next time, you be great.